Attention Northwest Arkansas businesses and talent seekers. Introducing OnboardNWA.com, your hyperlocal job board crafted for our unique community. Struggling to find the perfect match for your job openings? Onboard NWA simplifies the hiring process, connecting you with the region's top talent through tailored talent matching solutions. Whether you're an employer seeking expertise or a professional looking for your next opportunity, Onboard NWA is here for you. Discover more at onboardnwa.com, and let's build the future of Northwest Arkansas together.
Hey, this is Gary Head at Signature Bank of Arkansas. We founded Signature Bank in 2005 with local ownership to serve our communities with the best bankers with the most authority to do business. We have succeeded in growing our bank to over $800 million in assets, including $50 million in growth in the first quarter in 21. We have 155 teammates that love our communities and the customers that we serve. We are always here to serve and eager to do so. As Chairman and CEO, I welcome your call to have the opportunity to serve you. Please call 479-684-4700 or online at signature.bank and tell them that you heard about us at I Am Northwest Arkansas.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Without further ado, here's our fearless host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I've got a special episode for you today. I'm actually going to just do a monologue. It's not something that I've done recently. It's been a minute, and from time to time I get requests from people that say, hey, I've loved those monologues that you've done in the past, would love to hear another one. And so I decided to do a monologue today for today's episode. And so excited to be with you today, and don't have a guest in the studio, or I'm not at a location that I normally go to record an episode. So this is just me. And I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I've been up to, some things that are happening with the podcast and just life in general. And I just thought it would be cool to share what's going on. So here goes nothing. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody that has been supporting I Am Northwest Arkansas. From the bottom of my heart, people reach out both near and far, right? We have a lot of listeners that are outside of the region of Northwest Arkansas that listen to the podcast, people that either know me or may be considering coming here and they stumbled upon the podcast in their research on Northwest Arkansas. And then we have a lot of people that live here locally, and they really appreciate what we have been able to share from a storytelling perspective, from an informational perspective. And just know that when I get those emails from you, when I get those calls from you, messages, when people shout me out on, or shout us out on social media, we really, really appreciate it. And I just wanted to let you know from the bottom of my heart how much you guys mean to me, how much every listener of this podcast means to me. And we're going to continue to keep this going. And I hope to make you proud, as proud as I can make you, right? When listening to a podcast, because I don't know that you listen to a podcast on a regular basis and like, wow, I feel proud because I'm listening to that podcast. But I would hope you would feel proud for this one reason. One is we're highlighting all of the good things that are happening in Northwest Arkansas. And don't get me wrong. I understand there are bad things that happen in Northwest Arkansas, just like there are bad things that happen in other places. Maybe we just don't have our fair share of a lot of bad stuff like it happens in a lot of major cities. And, frankly, that could change as time moves on and as we get more people commuting and relocating to this area. So, we'll have to see. But I'd like to think that the nature of people here in Northwest Arkansas is special. And I'd like to think that as people come to Northwest Arkansas, they recognize that, and that even maybe softens them, right? As it softens the edges, if you will, of people when they come to a place like Northwest Arkansas and see how beautiful it is and take in the people and see how friendly they are. I mean, these are all things that I really was not fully aware of. I was telling somebody the other day, and again, you've heard me say this before on the podcast. I in a million years, I would have never, in 2012, if you had said, yeah, you're going to be living in Northwest Arkansas and you're going to love it, I'd have said, you are a liar. You don't know what you're talking about. But here we are, 2021. I've been in Northwest Arkansas now 7 years. Can you believe it, folks? 7 whole years. And I happen to believe that numbers mean things. And so 7 is the number of perfection. And I think this has been a perfect year. Not, obviously we're in the pandemic. We're dealing with that kind of stuff. So there's nothing perfect about that. But for me, and for what I'm doing with this podcast, this has been the year of perfection, of just getting some things together and fine-tuning my message, the voice that I have, and what I want to share with the world. And you guys matter, which is why I want to make sure that I'm putting out content that is resonating with the widest audience possible, with the understanding that I can't be all things to all people. So I know that some of you have listened to this podcast and have turned it off. And well, obviously you wouldn't be listening to it right now, but if you do listen to it, then clearly this is something that resonates with you one way or the other. And for that, I'm very, very thankful. But no, I just, it's a good time. It's a really good time to be in Northwest Arkansas. It's a good time as we, have kind of lifted each other up and tried to navigate through the challenges that the pandemic has created. And we're moving forward. I mean, there are a lot of job opportunities available here in Northwest Arkansas. There's a lot of companies that are relocating here, some of whom that I've actually had a chance to feature on the podcast in the recent past. And one that comes to mind is Michael La Salada and the rest of the team at Hellion Bikes, which is a new breed of BMX bicycles that are being made right here in Northwest Arkansas. He decided, Michael did, and his team, to basically uproot from the Pacific Northwest and come here to Northwest Arkansas and relocate his bike company. Smart move for a place that has more than 300 miles of mountain bike trails. But regardless, we welcome people like Michael that have decided to take the dip and come here to a place that's just a little different than some other parts of the country that you'll find. We are not overrun with development. We are not overrun with traffic and smog and all these other challenges that a lot of big cities face. And again, I don't know what the future will hold as we go from 450 to 500,000 people in this regional area to about 1 million folks by 2040 to 2045, according to the census and according to just population experts. We are growing, and we're going to continue to grow. We will double in size in the next 20 plus years, which is an amazing to think about. So I'm excited about it. And I know some people that have been here for forever and a day feel like, man, this area is changing maybe a little bit too fast for me. I hear you as well. And certainly I don't mind change. I hope that it's measured change and just not out of the box, irresponsible change and development and growth just for the sake of development and growth. And I do feel like we are much more thoughtful in how we're growing this area. I recently had the folks from the Urban Land Institute on the podcast, and they kind of shared their visions for what this area could be. And I've talked to so many other people that have shared the same sentiment about how we are growing positively and how we're being very thoughtful in how this area grows. So I'm just excited to see that. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to kind of talk about that briefly and really just have a simple conversation with you, because this is not one that I get to have with you on a regular basis. I've just been so busy working on podcast after podcast after podcast. And I've shared with people on this podcast before that in my day job. So my day job is I Am Northwest Arkansas, but it's also going out and helping other firms to create podcasts for them, for their organizations, to tell their story, to extend their brand, both externally to the world as well as internally to their team. And I've actually been a lot busier with that lately because companies are recognizing that voice matters and that they want to share their story in a portable format like a podcast where people can consume it whenever they want. And that's the beauty of this podcast. I'd love to learn, just as a side note from you guys that are listening, when and where do you listen to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast? You can leave me a message on Instagram at I Am Northwest Arkansas. You can also reach me at randy@IamNorthwestArkansas.com and just send me a message and say, hey, Randy, I listened to the podcast while doing X, walking the dog, heading over to ONF, Ozark Natural Foods, for those of you that don't know, heading out to Slaughter Pen and riding my mountain bike, jumping on the Greenway to ride my bike with friends, whatever it is. And I would hope that you aren't listening to a podcast while hanging out with friends, because that wouldn't be cool. But let's just say you're out on the Greenway by yourself for a leisurely half hour or an hour long ride. Take us along with you. We'd love to keep you company during that time on the road. As you think about things. And then, you know what? I'm a firm believer that sometimes silence is the best companion when riding on the Greenway. I have done a number of rides, as hard as it is for me to admit this, without any audio coming through my ears, just so that I could think. Sometimes you have to just stop and think. That's why Napoleon Hill wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich. It's not grow rich and then think. You have to do the thinking first. So this is not a podcast about entrepreneurship or about thinking to grow rich, but it's just that concept of having some time to slow down and think. And I would certainly encourage you to do that. And even if you take a moment to disengage from any audio influence that you might enjoy, be it Motley Crue, or, and I don't know why I chose them, but A Tribe Called Quest, or the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast, or Ozarks at Large with Kyle Kellums from KUAF. I don't care what you listen to. Sometimes you need to take a little breather from that just to hear yourself think. Sometimes thinking is the best antidote that we need in order to move ourselves forward, if you will. And so take that for what it's worth. It's something that I'm learning to do more of now. And so from time to time, if you see me in my neighborhood walking around and it appears that I'm singing, or maybe I'm really just talking to myself, I'm having an internal monologue about what I'm thinking about and what I'm processing. So there's so much to think about. But anyway, that's just something that I wanted to share. But we've had recently, in the past, we've had a number of great episodes. On episode 127, I had my good friend Ben Clark on from Be Unlimited, and they provide some of the best custom apparel in Northwest Arkansas and beyond. Great company. They are basically, if you wear a t-shirt at any of the SEC schools, it's probably made by Ben and his team at Be Unlimited. And he has an amazing team. And the thing I like about Ben is that he actually has a lot of young people that are running things there at Be Unlimited. And he has kind of taken his hands off of things to allow the rest of his team to do what they do best. And I think that's a great sign of a leader that instills that kind of trust and gives them guidance that they need, but isn't overbearing. And so shout out to Ben Clark. And that was actually episode 127. Any of our podcast episodes, if I refer to them, I'll give you the number, because the easiest way for you to find those episodes, if you're going online to do it, is just to go to IamNorthwestArkansas.com / and then the episode number, the actual physical digits. So in that case, if you want to listen to Ben's episode, you can go to IamNorthwestArkansas.com / 127, and you'll find Ben's episode. We also sat down with Mary Mickle from Resplendent Hospitality. I want to give a shout out to Mary because she was instrumental in helping us put together a press kit. And Mary is really good at what she does when it comes to PR, when it comes to marketing, creating an origin story. Mary Mickle is a genius. And I would highly recommend, I mean, she left Austin to come back to Northwest Arkansas, and has just blessed us with her talents and abilities through Resplendent Hospitality. So shout out to Mary Mickle. I also want to give a shout out to the folks at Blue Crane for what they're doing. in creating a new remote work hub with Common, which is a company out of Brooklyn, New York, I believe. But they were on the podcast not too long ago, and we had a chance to kind of talk about what that development is going to look like. And I guess the easiest way to describe it is kind of like WeWork, but from a residential standpoint. And Common is going to be the company that is going to pull it together, and Blue Crane is going to it is the one that won the RFP for this program. And so Common has agreed to come to Northwest Arkansas to build out another one of these remote work hubs. And so you're going to see more people that are going to be working on either coast but live here in Northwest Arkansas. So at the end of the day, their tax dollars and their income will be spent right here in our own backyard. And I think there's a real benefit to that. So the other thing is I had a chance to sit down with Jill Dabbs from downtown Springdale. Jill is amazing and just an outstanding firebrand. She used to be a mayor, and she's taking her skill set and expertise and ability to just revitalize downtown Springdale. I mean, there are other people that are doing that as well, but Jill is having a major hand in this process and is doing a great job. And I also want to shout out to Kira Ramsey, who introduced me to Jill, and we just made a great connection there. So, definitely want to check those guys out. That was episode 130. Episode 131, I sat down with Tom Gordon from Slim Chickens, one of our own local success stories. In 2003, 2004, thereabouts, Tom and his partners started Slim Chickens right there on College in Fayetteville, on North College in Fayetteville. And they have not let any grass grow under their feet. He tells an amazing story of what it means to be an entrepreneur, why having a strong banking relationship is important for any business, and how they plan to expand, and what Northwest Arkansas means to him and his team. And so certainly want to encourage you to check out that episode 131 of the podcast. I also got a chance, because I like to do this sometimes, and people ask me, how do you choose the people that you have on? And I look for interesting people. I also reciprocate people that invite me to come on their podcast. I will probably, if you invite me to come on your podcast, you'll probably get invited to come on this podcast. And one individual that invited me a while ago to come on his podcast was Daniel Quinn. And Daniel Quinn has a podcast called Look What I Did. And it's a very eclectic podcast. And it is, if you know Daniel, the podcast is his DNA all over, has his DNA all over it. And I just had a chance to finally sit down with Daniel Quinn at his dining room table. And we just had a great conversation. And just he kind of shared with me his story, how he got to Northwest Arkansas, why he has stayed in Northwest Arkansas, and now he's raising his child here. And we actually live right near each other. We're like neighbors. I didn't realize that, but it was cool to just almost walk over to his house and do the podcast episode. And that was a lot of fun. So episode 132 with Daniel Quinn. Episode 133, I sat down with Paul Gatling, who runs the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal. And he basically deals with all the business news in Northwest Arkansas and beyond that's fit to print. And Paul is a great guy. He's got a tremendous amount of experience in this area of journalism and just in the whole business scene here in Northwest Arkansas. And I highly recommend that you subscribe to the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal if you want to learn more about this area from an economic and from an entrepreneurship perspective. It certainly is a great book, certainly is a great newspaper. Well, it's not really a newspaper, but it's an online periodical that I read on a regular basis. And I follow the newsletter, and they actually have a physical publication as well, which you can subscribe to. And I highly recommend that you check it out. Episode 134, we sat down with Brandy Harris. She's a marriage and family counselor. She's also written a book. And what we decided to focus on was the fact that there are actually a lot of options in Northwest Arkansas for counseling. We know that mental health is so important, and it's one of those things where we don't like to talk about it a lot. Nobody wants to talk about their mental health or anything like that. And so I certainly want to encourage you to check out that episode, especially if this is something that you struggle with. And the newsflash here is that you are not alone. I have been to therapy. We all need a sounding board, right? It doesn't mean you have to go sit on a couch somewhere and have somebody listen to everything that you say, although that's not actually a bad idea. I think a lot of times we have a hard time processing our thoughts and our ideas. And this is not the podcast to really get into all that. But the bottom line is my encouragement is to definitely consider it. Don't, because, the biggest mistake we make is that we feel like we're in this by ourselves, and we really are not. And other people are going through some of the same challenges that you may be struggling with. So definitely want to encourage you to check it out. Check out that episode. That is episode 134 of the podcast. Episode 135, I sat down with Keaton Smith. Now, Keaton is amazing. This dude works at Iberia Bank. He's a vice president there. He's on the school board in the city of Fayetteville. He's helping to run a nonprofit housing organization and doing so many different things. And he has a passion for housing and how we are going to address housing here in Northwest Arkansas as we continue to rapidly grow at the rate that we're growing. So I definitely encourage you to check out episode 135 with Keaton Smith. He is just an outstanding individual. And Keaton reminds me of the kind of people that we have here in Northwest Arkansas that really just want to see this place be the best version of itself. People like Keaton, people like Wes Craiglow from the Urban Land Institute, and so many others that are just really focusing on having smart, measured growth here in Northwest Arkansas. I also did an episode with Anthony Sumlin. Anthony, for those of you that don't know, is a very good friend of mine. He's a dear friend of mine. He's actually the reason why several people on this podcast have been guests of mine. He was the introducer. He was the link, if you will, or I won't call him a gatekeeper, but he was the reason why I connected with a lot of people. Between him and Mark Zweig, I have lost track, but they're probably arguably responsible for about 40 or 50 of the guests that I've had on this podcast. And we're up to, as of the recording of this episode, we're up to about 142, 143 episodes of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. So yeah, we are moving forward. And Anthony is just a great guy. He's a great husband, he's a great father, and he's a great friend. And we had a chance to talk about how the importance of relationships, something that I teach on and I talk about. Relationships are everything. It's the one thing that I leave my kids with every day before we head to school. I drive them to the school bus. They go to the Arkansas Arts Academy. Big shout out to the Arts Academy because it's one of the only arts academies in Northwest Arkansas. It's based in Rogers. It's got 2 locations. It's got a lower school and an upper school. Fabulous program. They've got resources like you wouldn't believe. When that charter school originally started, I believe the Walton Family Foundation really sewed into that movement so that they could get an arts school built up, and it has served this area well and continues to grow. And I'm proud to say that all 3 of my boys go there, and they have become even more talented than I could have ever imagined, especially from an artistic perspective. 2 of my boys had featured roles in the most recent Matilda play for Theater Squared that took place this past summer. My other son, I think he thinks he's Kendrick Lamar. And I keep telling him he's actually got some real talent when it comes to going into the sound studio and mixing up, or as he says, as the kids say, cooking up beats. And he's really good at that. He's also a basketball player, and he has a wide variety of interests. But because of the doors that the Arkansas Arts Academy opened up for him, he's able to do a lot of things. But anyway, I just said that relationships are everything. So I tell them every morning before they go off to school, just to remind them that who I always say to them, who are you going to build a relationship with today? And I always want them to be very proactive about that. But that's something that I encourage everybody to do. If we're not growing, we're dying. And if we're not, it's hard for anybody to move to a new area and not build some relationships. And I know sometimes it's difficult, especially if you are the type of individual that is, shy, reserved. Maybe you take a little bit of prodding in order to get out there and get in front of folks. So I really want to encourage you to be thinking about how you can connect with folks and build strong relationships. If there was ever a place to build strong, genuine relationships, Northwest Arkansas is that place. I've done it in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. I actually I thrive on building and creating relationships, because that is the lifeblood of who we are and what we're able to do. Because you never know where a relationship leads. And it's not from a transactional standpoint. It is purely from a relational standpoint, but sometimes things come out of those relationships. So, take that for what it's worth. But check out that episode I did with Anthony. It was a lot of fun, and we encourage each other to be the best versions of ourselves. And Anthony does amazing work with Sam's Club, and I always appreciate all of the encouragement that he gives me. And so just a big shout out to Anthony Sumlin, and certainly encourage you to check out episode 136. Episode 137, we had Meredith Lowry, and Meredith Lowry is an outstanding patent attorney from Wright Lindsay Jennings. She has no shortage of energy. She's into so many different things. I think I do a lot. Meredith does a lot. And she's also but she helps to organize a program called Women Run, which helps women in business, especially those that are doing startups, and just encouraging women to make sure that there are opportunities out there for them to, get their dreams off the ground, especially for those that want to start and or run and or grow their business. So certainly want to encourage you to check out episode 137 of the podcast with Meredith Lowry. Episode 138, we sat down with another a brilliant individual. His name is Edwin Ortiz, and he started a company called Rejoicey in the middle of the pandemic. He had already had a pretty successful company called Luncher that the model was genius, but the pandemic just ruined it, because the whole idea was to deliver lunch for people during their lunch hour. But then when everybody started working from home, their lunch hour was reduced to them walking to their refrigerator in their house and making a sandwich. So that cut out the middleman, which would have been Edwin. And so Rejoicey came out, and it's essentially a platform for small businesses to spin up a storefront to sell it just about anything that you could think of. And they have really created an opportunity, and they have a nice little niche that they're serving. Certainly want to encourage you to check out episode 138 and hear all of the things that Edwin is working on with Rejoicey, and how much of a difference they have made even during this pandemic. It's a very positive story. The next story that we had Daymara on, and Daymara, her last name is Baker, and she's a baker. She is the founder of Rockin' Baker, and Rockin' Baker is a artisanal bakery with a social purpose, and she hires people that are on the spectrum to work for her. She has an outstanding team of people that know what they're doing. They bake some amazing bread. She's responsible for the wonderful bread that they serve there at Big Orange. So if you've ever had a sandwich at Big Orange and Rogers, that's her bread. She makes that. She makes this jalapeno loaf that is out of this world. So if you like jalapenos and you like bread, you need to check out Rockin' Baker. They're right there near the big Walmart up by Joyce, in the same little strip mall where Fat Tire is. Certainly encourage you to check out Daymara Baker. And I was really impressed. She called my wife the other day and said, "Oh my God, some people came in and said they listened to the podcast episode and they wanted to try out my bread." And she thought that was cool. I appreciate you guys when you learn about something on this podcast and then you share it with other people. Please continue to do that. I tell you, that is something that is really, beneficial for us, and it allows us to continue to keep this thing going. We want to grow this podcast, and we're going to continue to do that, but we can't do it without your help, without your support. And of course, as always, I'm an open book. If you have ideas or if you have something you want to share with me, please feel free to share it. But we're going to continue to move this ship forward. And we certainly, it's always nice to have people like you listening, our listeners, our loyal listeners, as the wind at our back. So thank you for that. I talked about Michael La Salada from Hellion. And then we also finally sat down with Alex Holder English, who is the marketing and kind of PR rep there at XNA Airport, Fly XNA. And we originally had interviewed Alex pre-pandemic, and then that episode seemed to not make any sense just because nobody was traveling. But then we finally got back to traveling again. which I've even done. I've been on the road to see some clients. I'm even going to see some clients next month in the month of November as we record this. But I think that Alex had a great story to share about how the airport is changing fundamentally, some of the things that we're going to see happen. There's a new expansion that's taking place at the airport. So I just want to encourage you to check out some of the things that are going on with our episodes, especially that one, that Fly XNA episode with Alex Holder English, episode 141. Definitely worth a listen, and let us know what you think about that. There are other things that we've been working on too. I recently teamed up with the Northwest Arkansas Council.org. Shout out to them. And they asked me to be the moderator for the Onward Ozarks program, which is a program that comes up every a couple of months. And it's essentially a program just to talk about things that are happening here in the region. The next program that will come up actually happens after this episode is released on the 28th of October, 2021. There will be 5 local physicians that are convened on a virtual panel to talk about COVID-19 and how we're dealing with it and what we need to do, and really just to share information, not to cast doubts or to tell people they're doing something wrong, or if you're on the fence about getting a vaccine, that's your right. But I also think it's important for you to know all the information, and I don't know that we always know all the information, and so these physicians, these experts will be on there, and actually one of the guests of this panel is Dr. Marty Sharkey, who was on a previous special episode that we did on COVID-19 a couple of months back here on the Northwest Arkansas podcast. So I would encourage you to check it out. Sign up. If nothing else, sign up for the events. It's a free event. You also, if you're local, you get an Uber Eats gift card for signing up. There's a certain number, so once we hit that threshold, that's it. But I would encourage you to check out the Onward Ozarks event. If you're there in the audience, just give me a shout out. Say, hey, Randy, how are you doing? And I'll certainly acknowledge you. I would encourage you to do that. The other thing I really do want to highlight, which has been a huge issue, the Bella Vista bypass just opened on October 1st. And folks, I got to tell you, it is so nice. Nothing against Bella Vista, but I'm telling you that little 15 minutes of being able to drive at 70, 75 miles an hour straight through to the rest of 49 as you get up into Missouri has been a blessing. And I've actually been on it a few times as I've traveled back and forth to Kansas City to take my son to league soccer games up there. So definitely want to encourage you to check out that bypass when you get a chance. It is a game changer. And so there's a lot happening here in Northwest Arkansas, and I'm really excited about that. There's a lot that we're going to be featuring on this podcast. I'm not going to tease it all out now, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to just share with you. And again, I have not done a monologue of my thoughts and what's happening. And if you like these types of episodes, I would love your feedback. We always want to keep it simple, and we don't want to go too far in the weeds with these, but we definitely want to keep people engaged and let them know that we're listening, and that it is important to us to know what is important to you. So I would love to hear from you. If there's anything that we can change, please just feel free to let us know, and we'll be happy to work on that. But just remember that this is something that I didn't know I needed, and it is you. I needed you guys, and I needed the people that I have invited on the podcast to be guests. It has truly been a blessing to me, and it's something that I don't take lightly, the responsibility that I've been given to be able to share people's stories. And who knows, maybe your story will be next, but we'll see what happens. That's all I wanted to share this week on this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. To learn more about us, or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. You can also listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Sign up today. You can subscribe to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it, and please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for a new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes and more information on becoming a guest or sponsor, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.